Welcome to tonight's NAN Virtual Huddle, our talk to close out Mental Health Awareness Month. We are excited to welcome NAN Youth Huddle and college leadership in conversation with mental health experts, faith leaders, and activists for a virtual discussion on protecting one's mental health in today's social, political, and spiritual climate. Our special guest panelists include Dr. Racine R. Henry, Dr. Donald Clark Garner II, Dr. M. Travis Boyd, Deborah Clark, Minister Stephen Marshall, Alicia Butler, Derek Perkinson, and Minister Jasmine Jefferson. Our panel and digital tech is JT Trollinger, and our curator is none other than Miss Ashley Sharpton. Tune in to our NAN Facebook and YouTube pages, and please write your questions in the chat. My name is Patrice Perry, and I'm a senior advisor of the NAN Youth Huddle, and I'm excited to be a part of it. And I welcome you to join us every Monday in person, and monthly we will be live virtually. Make sure you join us. We look forward to having you. Our scripture for tonight is none other, and it's befitting for this occasion, Psalms 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leads me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell within the house of the Lord forever. Let us go to God in prayer. Most gracious and wise God, we come this very moment, this very second. Before we ask you for anything, God, we want to thank you for this day. Thank you for breathing the breath of life into our bodies. God, we ask you right now that as we go into this mental health discussion, even though mental health ends today, God, so many millions of people are suffering. We ask you, God, that as they come on to this virtual talk and as they listen, God, that they will be encouraged to get help if they need it, to get healing if they need it, to get deliverance if they need it. God, we ask you to be with our NAN Youth Huddle. God, be with National Action Network, all of his chapters, all of his leadership, our president and founder. God, continue to watch over our young people, God, those 19 children that we lost. God, the 10 people we lost in Buffalo. For we know that the devil is a liar. For we know that you are still good. You are still God. You still reign. You still heal. You still deliver. God, you still will come through and be the God that you are. So for that, we tell you thank you tonight. Thank you for this conversation, God. Thank you for the healing that's going to happen on this virtual talk. Thank you, God. Thank you. And all of your children said, amen. I have the esteemed pleasure to introduce to you now our National Director of Membership, which is none other than Ms. Dominique Sharpton, who will introduce and let you get started with our esteemed panel. Welcome, Dominique Sharpton.
Thank you, Patrice, and good evening, everyone. Good evening. So May is Mental Health Awareness Month. It has been observed in May in the United States since 1949. It is time to really raise awareness about mental health issues and to help reduce the pain and stigma that so many experience. The reality is that we all go through a lot of ups and downs in our life. No one is immune from life's sufferings and life's challenges, regardless of socioeconomic status, religion, ethnicity, gender, or sexual orientation. If you are struggling with depression or anxiety or other psychiatric problems that are getting in the way of your life, in the way of your relationships, the very best thing that you can do is to reach out and ask for help. You do not need to suffer alone in silence. Depression and anxiety in the past year among the US adults ages 18 or older is at an estimated of 21 million that have had at least one major depressive episode. This number represents 8.4% of all United States adults. The prevalence of major depressive episodes is higher among adult females at 10.5% compared to males at 6.2%. The prevalence of major depressive episodes was highest among individuals ages 18 to 25, followed by those ages 45 to 64 and 65 and older, and also those ages of 30 to 44 years old at 16.8%. Anxiety disorders are the most common mental illnesses in the United States, affecting 40 million adults, 18 and older, or 18.1% of the population every year. Anxiety disorders are highly treatable, yet only 36.9% of those suffering receive treatment. In 2020, approximately 1.4 million adults 18 and older attempted suicide in the United States. Females attempt suicide 3 times as often as males. Lesbian, gay, and bisexual children are 3 times more likely than straight children to attempt suicide at some point in their lives. Lesbian, gay, and bisexual young people who come from families that reject or do not accept them are over 8 times more likely to attempt suicide than those families who accept them. Suicide thoughts and gestures are the greatest predictors of suicide. In the year 2020, suicide was the second leading cause of death for people between the ages of 10 to 14 years old and 25 to 34 years old. Men and women between the ages of 45 and 64 are at a higher risk of suicide. According to domestic violence, every day, 3 American women are killed by their intimate partner. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men have been victims of severe physical violence by an intimate partner in their lifetime. According to the CDC Youth Risk Behavior Survey, about 1 in 12 high school students experienced physical or sexual dating violence. Only 33% of teens who were in an abusive relationship ever told anyone about the abuse. About 21% of college co-eds report having experienced dating abuse by our current partner. And although the data and statistics are overwhelming, we fortunately can come together to talk about solutions and to be catalysts for change, for support, for outreach, for resources, and can come together as a community to develop what we need to help each other to make it through. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our esteemed panelists for this evening's and tonight's discussion and forum. We have a group of highly impactful and amazing people, therapists, ministers, spiritual leaders, community leaders who are coming together, young people who are coming together tonight to discuss this in its entirety and how we as a community can continue to come together to really progress change. I like to turn it over to start introducing themselves. First and foremost, I like to turn it over first to Dr. Racine Henry and then to the other panelists to come on, introduce themselves, and we'll get right into tonight's discussion.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Racine Henry. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in New York and New Jersey. I've been practicing since 2008, and my focus is on Black mental health, Black couples, interracial couples, and treating infidelity. I can be found on social media at Sankofa Therapy NYC on Instagram. My website is sankofatherapynyc.com, and I'm also on Twitter as Dr. Ray Renee. Thank you for having me.
All right. Aaliyah, good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Hello, how's everyone feeling? My name is Aaliyah Guillory Nickens. I'm one of the youth representatives at NAN's Youth Huddle, and I'm going to be here asking a few questions.
Grace
Dr.
and peace.
Gardner.
Yes, grace and peace, everyone. My name is Dr. Donald Garner. I am the young adult pastor at the Greater Allen AME Cathedral of New York in Jamaica, Queens. I'm also the CEO of Clark and Garner, which is a full scope educational consulting firm where I specialize in content design, really in the area of developing programs around socio emotional learning for young men of color. And I also am an adjunct professor at the Fordham Graduate School of Education's doctoral program. You can find me on Twitter as well as Instagram at DC Garner. And I am so excited to be a part of this illustrious panel this evening.
Minister Boyd. Dr. Boyd. Excuse me. I think we're having audio issues, Dr. Boyd.
Can't hear you.
All right, we're going to get Dr. Boyd's audio issues corrected. Minister Jefferson, good evening.
Good evening, everyone. I am Minister Jasmine Jefferson of the Metropolitan Baptist Church. I'm just here to provide some spiritual insight, and I'm grateful and humble to participate. Nice to meet everybody tonight.
Mr. Perkinson.
How you guys doing? I got my Nan Fit on today. I just want y'all to know that Derek Perkinson, National Action Network. This is the family, the action, the movement. Thank everyone for participating in this tonight. And I'm the New York State Field Director as well as the Crisis Director. But basically, we just do help people here at the National Action Network. So we're looking forward to having a great discussion. And I have a lot to add on all these levels that we're going to talk about.
And Dr. Boyd.
Yes, can you hear me?
Put you on my good side.
Awesome. Thank you, Dominique. My name is Dr. Travis Boyd. I'm the Associate Pastor at Canaan Baptist Church of Christ in the village of Harlem, New York. I am also an educator for the last 11 years, teaching history and also ELA to high school students in the Bronx.
Dosa.
Hello, everyone. My name is Felipe Dosa. I'm a rising junior at Morehouse College, and I also serve as NAN National Youth and College Field Director. I'm so happy to be here.
Is that all of our participants? Okay, well, if anyone else joins, I'm sure they'll pop on, and we're happy to have them join the discussion. We want to start by just kind of setting the tone here. So we've certainly heard in recent news of many mass shootings and tragedies that have really challenged us as a nation to not only see and witness, but to also start to depict what are the issues that are underlying and why some of these tragedies have taken place. From the perspective of a therapist, and I know that Dr. Henry and Dr. Garner probably can talk to this specifically, what are some of the underlying issues that may lead to a traumatic experience such as what we've seen in recent tragedies, such as in Uvalde, Texas, or in Buffalo, New York, where we who are advocates for young people can start to point out and start to deal with the healing process of what needs to be identified and pursued on the onset to help try to prevent these things from happening.
Go ahead, Dr. Henry.
Thank you. So one of the things that I think people overlook because it sounds scary is when children express longing to hurt themselves and longing to hurt other people, they really need a safe space to fully flesh out and explore those thoughts and feelings. Most times we try to silence kids or distract them, or push away things that we as adults find difficult to deal with. And I think if these kids had that safe space, had that trusted adult in therapy or in other contexts, it could really help them figure out what's happening for them before it becomes a demonstrated action. A lot of times with these shootings, you'll hear people talk about mental illness and mental health. They aren't the same thing. You can have mental health diagnosis and not be mentally ill, and most people with diagnoses are not violent people. So the rhetoric gets lost in these mass events because we want answer, we want to figure out how to stop it and the whys. But as we all know, there are a lot of systems in place that contribute to the whys, and it's not as simple as get them to therapy. I do think that earlier intervention could help at least identify what is happening and to whom, but that in itself isn't the only answer either.
And I want to add to what Dr. Henry said. So I'm not my PhD was in social work, and so have not gotten into the stage where I'm going into the licensure route. So I've been more on the policy side, but I do work extensively with young people, young men of color, in particular, as I said in my intro. And one of the strategies that I've been employing has been pulling from Dr. Goldie Muhammad's "Cultivating Genius." It's a phenomenal book, and she talks about this notion of creating learning societies for our children to develop, what she calls criticality. And so it's this notion of giving our boys and our girls, especially those of color in particular, language to verbalize what they're seeing in the world around them, right? So instead of them, allowing life to happen to them, that they can be critical consumers, right, of how to speak, truth to power of these nuances, as Dr. Henry talked about, right? So in these societies, there can be opportunities to equip them with loads of perspective, right, that we can eventually sophisticate our kids' toolkit of how to understand again what's happening, to them on a regular basis. So for me, that has been the primary space that I've been hanging out in because it gives me more hope than anything that if I can at least allow our kids to again have some language to what they're saying, perhaps I can put our society in a better place as these things continue to happen in our society.
I want to take a moment to introduce Sister Alicia Butler and also Deborah Clark, who are joining us in the discussion tonight. Please introduce yourselves and welcome to our room tonight.
Hi, everyone. I am Alicia Butler. I work outside of the Washington, D.C. Bureau. I handle our health and wellness work. I serve as our health and wellness policy associate, and I am happy to join. I am excited because one of my main things that I wanted to do within this portfolio was expand on some of the work that we're already doing with mental health. So I'm excited to be a part of this conversation and to kind of just talk a little bit about some of the work that we've already been doing and will continue to.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Debbie Clark. I am a social worker, and I'm also one of the crisis directors at National Action Network alongside Derek Perkinson, who is the crisis director. So I'm happy to be a part and, to be a part of this mental health initiative and to help, make our people aware of what the issues are.
Thank you. So now while we have Alicia and Deborah on as well, I do want to talk about some of the legislation that needs to be passed, or when we're looking at like really peeling back the layers of how mental health has not only rampaged our us in this country, post the pandemic. A lot of people are traumatized, are depressed, anxious. There's not enough, mental health providers, therapists that are able to offer services, to render services and still make a living in order to really meet the need of all who need therapy and help. And so, what are some of the ways that we can certainly address being an advocacy organization with National Action Network? I know that we want to definitely pinpoint some of the overlying legislative components that will support our efforts in making sure that people get resources and valuable information. So what are some of the legislative components that people may not be privy to that we can tap into in order to really help to address the need that is so overwhelming in our nation right now? Alicia, do you want to speak to that first? Deborah?
Okay, I'll touch on that a little. I think making mental health more affordable. I think a lot of our people don't know how to access, or rather, how to effectively access mental health resources. They think you have to pay out of pocket every single time, and that's not necessarily the case. Or they may not know how to, just reach out to the proper I guess, platforms of mental health resources. Just so I would say just kind of like helping to bridge the gap between especially our older generation. I see a lot of that as of lately. A lot of our older people who may not be tech savvy like our younger generations of people are. So teaching them how to properly navigate them, providing them a number, or just really just educating them more.
Does anyone else on our panel want to elaborate on that?
Can you guys hear me? I'm unsure if.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I can speak to that. I think one of the biggest components and some of the things that we do is just to continue calling on our members of Congress to expand healthcare access to more rural communities and rural areas where they are not as accessible, because within all of those pieces of legislation and focus, um, the span of that does focus on mental health resources. I think the other thing that we can do is continue to work with advocacy groups across the board and across organizations that are already doing the work, and just to continue to expand on some of the work that they're doing in partners. So one of the things that we have been doing and we have working up gearing up right now is partnering with the Boris Lawrence Hinton Foundation, which is Taraji P. Henson's nonprofit organization, where she is specifically working and leading the fight when it comes to mental health awareness. We will be participating this weekend, this Saturday, in their Can We Talk and Joy Awards Symposium, where we'll have a virtual booth, and they're giving us a platform to just kind of highlight some of the work that we're doing, while also driving people to the work that they're doing. So doing things like that and finding ways to continue to build out partnerships with organizations that are already doing that work, and then seeing where there's a collective collaborative effort in which we can kind of continue to push for mental health resources within our communities, um, and making sure that people understand how to access them.
Okay, anyone else?
And Dominique, this is Derek Perkins, and I want to touch up. Stephen Marshall, good to see you, my brother. Here in New York City, we're working on an initiative actually to have police not respond to mental health calls, and to have a special mental health unit respond to those calls, and less likely a loss of a life during the interaction. But what we got to do, and I'm looking forward to Minister Jasmine speak on this too. Again, as I grow, we're all adjusting to life. I'm 51 years old. I'm still learning certain things in life. But I do know this: when I was growing up, not only did we have the birth of hip hop and we listened to hip hop, but we went to church and we had a balance. So we were putting junk in our ears as far as hip hop and some of the rough things that's said in that music. But then we have the balancing act of going to church, getting some good positive spiritual awakening. So I'm thinking this generation with the mental crisis, there's no balance. So it's all aggression, and as most of the aggression is turned on each other. I didn't hear nobody in the hood who was really upset and wanted to take up arms against what happened in Buffalo, where this guy targeted a black community and went to try to harm us to lethal extent. It became a mass murder. So we have to have a balance. There's not enough balance in our society. Like Dominique said, before pandemic hit, our communities were the most susceptible to all of the things that are presented to us. Health wise, economic wise, we were in shape to stay home and quarantine like everyone comfortably. So it was a tough task, and hopefully we'll correct some things moving forward. But we have to have a balance. A lot of parents that are having these children as well are very young. They have these children very young, and not no parenting classes. So then, when you listen to music, when I watch the movies, and I know it's or Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, I know that that's not real life. I know it's fantasy. Somebody told me that's not real life. That's fantasy. That's how you look at it. But these kids are looking at this music something different. And I know that I'm not tapped into this drill music, but I know this drill thing is taking off, and it is really detrimental in our community, where these guys are really doing some devious things. So we need balance. We definitely need God. We need balance in the struggle as we fight forward.
I think I
Go
also,
ahead. Go ahead.
I
I
think
was
I
gonna say,
also just wanted to. Can you guys hear me? I think
Yes.
it's feedback. I think I also just want to add that I'm starting to see a shift in the way the African American community's relationship is changing with mental health. I think for a long time we never really acknowledged or recognized that we dealt with mental health challenges, so we didn't necessarily know how to deal with them when it came time to. So the relationship between us acknowledging mental health challenges and then going about how we deal with them, our relationship with how we view therapy, um, I think continuing to strengthen that and work on that and encouraging the next generation to do the same thing, um, while also advocating on the higher levels with legislation, and across board advocacy groups. All of those things working cohesively together will help with our mental health.
And Alicia, you're not lying,
You
because when we
mentioned
was growing up, we would look at counseling or psychiatry as something bad. We
Right.
never everybody in the community when I was growing up looked at that stuff like it was bad, but it's very much needed. It's very much needed.
But just to
Dr. Henry,
piggyback
I
off
think
of
wanted to
what
say something.
what was that?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Just so no worries. So just piggybacking off of what Derek was saying, like yeah, like I really see that the mental health stigma is really starting to lift, especially in lieu of the pandemic. When we talk about mental health, and I think a lot of people think that mental health has a look, and it doesn't. You can't look at someone and say, hey, like you're depressed, or you can look at somebody and say, hey, you have schizophrenia or bipolar or something like that. But yeah, so I think people are really starting to recognize, like, hey, you know what, I'm not feeling okay, and it's okay to say that I'm not okay, and then seek out the proper help that you may need.
I was going to say that I could speak to some available free and low cost mental health options, but I don't know if you want me to hold that to the very end rather than interrupting the conversation now with that.
both Derek and Alicia mentioned the shift and also church. So I wanted to ask, for those who are believers, some are saying there must be a mental and spiritual shift in this fight because we are fighting evil in high places. What does that shift look like to you all? And National Action Network, as a Christian based led organization, how can we continue to center mental wellness and conversations in our communities?
If I can just start this conversation here, from this portion, I think we need to look back, and within our churches, within our own community, and identify and really see where a lot of these mental illness situations or circumstances have taken place, and they've taken place on the plantation fields, during slavery, causing trauma, and even going down into generations. No one knew how to handle trauma or what the trauma was, or how to maneuver through this process of either being raped or beat or being abused or being sold or separated from your family, which all these things do causes moments, or individuals to have moments of mental illness. If we really look at the generation prior to us, even my grandmother, my aunts, my mom, they never really talked about your feelings, right? It was just, let's go pray it away, and let's keep it pushing, right. And the reality is that, although prayer does work, prayer does change things. There's some things that will require us on our end to make sure that we take care of ourselves. So not only are we in a right spiritual place, but mentally we're in a good place where we're whole completely. The church has been just like our society, especially the black church specifically, has been like the black culture. We've swept things under the rug. We've tried not to talk about things. We don't want to deal with mental illness. We don't want to deal with individuals who suffer from abuse from their parents because they identify as LGBTQ plus I. We don't want to deal with individuals who suffer from trauma of being raped or even being beaten as children, or even as grown adults in a sense. And the church has to do a better job at responding to mental illness, understanding that we should be able to call on God for what we need, but also call on a therapist to help us when we are mentally not in the right space to help us live our everyday lives, as well as help those navigate their lives as well too.
Well said,
I
Pastor.
think I think I'll jump in if I may. Greetings to the panel. Thank you, Dominique, Ashley, and the Huddle leadership for inviting me. Very important conversation. I think Dr. Boyd hit on some things that are spot on. But there's an observation I think we should add with that is that if you look at the health deserts, deserts that exist in our communities right now, just imagine what it was in the 50s and 60s, right? So you don't have our parents and grandparents didn't have the opportunity to take their children to a mental health clinic. They had to take them to the health department. And those professionals that we went to go see or that was available to us, they had cultural incompetency, which means that they would automatically want to put your children on medication, right, or Ritalin. We know what that did to our children in the generation. So I think as we still talk about these issues, we have to make observations on where a lot of it comes from. The other part is that a lot of our people were just unlearned, right? And so to say that prayer will fix somebody that has a social disorder or behavior is because that's all we knew. And so you're talking about learned behavior, passed down traditions that did not always benefit us, but that's what they knew. I think if we're going to have the conversation about the Black church or church in general, we have to have the hard conversation to talk about um, some of the first abuses and neglect and mistreatment that some of our people have faced started at church. Just I'll let you think about it for a minute. Some of us, if we want to go deep into the conversation about some of our children or just many of us sexually assaulted happened at church. And so I think unless we're going to have the full, honest conversation about stuff that transpired in our childhoods that caused all of this trauma to now, manifest as adults in some of our behaviors, whether it be promiscuity or whether it be anything that's out of what we deem the norm, we have to go to the root cause of it. I think some of those conversations are hard but necessary.
I think what everyone's been talking about is really important, and it alludes to this intergenerational trauma that we've been talking about. And I don't want to demonize the Black church at all, because that has been a source of strength and resources for us throughout time. I think the church has a place in the cycle, but we also have to remember that we're Black people in America, and we have a very unique experience being in this country where slavery happened. Other cultures, other races were able to come here for reprieve from their trauma. They were able to come here and start over. We've never been able to really go anywhere else and start in a mass the way that we are here in this country. So that can't be ignored, and we have to keep everything in that context of the other systems in place that are there for the reason to keep us in a certain position. And we have made a lot of advances as Black people, and we continue to strive and meet different marks. But the ultimate, I think, overarching problem hasn't been addressed, which is racism, which is internalized racism, which is white supremacy, all these different things that trickle down into the problems that we see amongst each other. Even if you want to look at all these different things that trickle down, all of these things come from what we experienced during slavery and how we were made to survive in that time. So I think we have to, as a people, address some of those origins of the trauma and look at what is and is not serving us present day, and what things we need to redo or undo to move forward in the most healthy and positive way possible.
I see. Thank you, Dr. Henry. That was a very poignant point to add to the discussion. I see that Mr. Terrence Floyd has joined us. Many of you know Terrence. He's been very outspoken and vocal and present in the community, especially after the death of his brother, George Floyd, 2 years ago. And he is our brother. He's an activist. He's been out there on the front lines, really pushing for justice not only in the aftermath of his brother's death, but for all who deserve. And so it's an honor to have Terrence join us tonight as we're talking about mental health, and we're in Mental Health Awareness Month on this last day. We know that Terrence has a very personal story as it relates to mental health awareness. And if you can just share some of the tools or resources or things that you've incorporated into your well-being in order to really push through and keep going after having been, in this tragic and terrible, horrific situation that really brought the country to its knees in terms of your brother and his death. Terrence Floyd.
All right, thank you everyone for having me on here. Appreciate it. I'm based. You hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. When it comes to mental health, yes, I really think that's an important topic that needs to be addressed in our community because a lot of people don't talk about it. And I came on when the young man was talking about churches. Uh, it actually with me, it actually did start in the church where because you want to understand as a man what's going on in the world, and not always you want to hear. I'm not saying scriptures are wrong, but not always you want to hear scriptures. You want to hear real talk, and it wasn't given that. So then you try to understand who you are as a person and how to communicate with people, and that's basically where it started for me. Where because I tried to communicate with the people in the church, couldn't. Then I went to the community, the hood, and then once I didn't get what I wanted there, then I just started trying to do things on my own. And that's basically where where it went wrong for me because I'm trying to figure everything out on my own by myself, not getting the proper help. And then when I try to get the proper help, nobody's really listening, nobody's really paying attention, nobody understands. So I'm just telling my personal story. Uh, so that's why on this platform I try to understand the youth. I try to look them in the eyes and relate to them because I needed that help, and I'm getting it now at the age I'm at now. I'm getting it now, but and I don't want the youth to have to wait till they're my age to get that type of help. So that's why I'm out here, boots to the ground, trying to make sure that they don't go down that path of not understanding themselves and understanding their culture. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Terrence.
Terrence. Yes, Minister Jefferson.
Hi. So, two things. I was listening to Mr. Perk and Mr. Floyd, and one thing that was mentioned in the beginning was balance. And so, whenever you look at it's a particular name for a scale. It's called a trip scale, otherwise known as an equal arm balance scale, right? And so what happens is there is a rod in the center and two balance beams holding on to the sides of it. And when it comes to balance, the church for the Black community was supposed to be that foundation and that balance, right? And then government should have been hanging on one side and personal life should have been hanging on the other side, right? Because the Bible tells us, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and they shall call him Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Prince of Peace. But unfortunately, what we did over time, we started to worship the traditions and not recognize the power of the healing of the word. And so, to something like Mr. Floyd was saying, the reason why he couldn't get those answers in the church was because our ancestors were focused on making sure the tradition kept us in structure based upon the slavery tactics that were passed down to them. So their minds had been conditioned that you have to have structure in order to be respected and in order to be revered. However, as the church evolves, because I think that that's an issue that we have, which is evolution, we have to get to a place where we communicate with our youth and we communicate with our peers the power of therapy in association with the word of God, right? The power of your testimony in association with studying the word and making sure that the word is made plain to you, and making sure that the word is not something that is meant to boost your ego so that you can pick on your brother or your sister, but instead it is something that first heals you so that you know how to function and operate in your community and possibly provide healing to others. But unfortunately, we have run into an issue where we have perverted everything that should have had purpose, and we have perverted everything that should have had promise, and we have perverted everything that should have been giving God glory. And as a result, we are running into issues where the church is not standing up to who they should be, and the community is running into frustration. And as a result, we're having a clash of mental illness, right? And so now we find people in limbo where they're like, I would love to go to church, but it's just too much. They do too much. And unfortunately, if we don't continue to evolve, then our mentality can't do it, which is what the Bible tells us. Let this mind be in us, which is also in Christ Jesus. And then it tells us as well, the renewing of your mind. So if the church's mind doesn't evolve, then we will continue to run into mental health issues. And I think that it is up to the clergy. I think that it is up to individuals on the front line to continue to reiterate that we must do the work to have therapy and have the word. And much like Nehemiah said, a sword in one hand and a brick in the other. So that was my take. Thank you.
Well said,
Um,
Pastor.
I definitely
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I definitely agree with Minister Jefferson on the balance too. My mother, growing up, she used to say that the balance of school, home, and church. Those all three go together. And growing up, my home and the school was always a balance. But it just seems like I think that's where it kind of tripped me up because I used to invite friends to church, and my mother was an evangelist, so I know exactly what y'all talking about. I used to invite friends to church, and because of the tradition, and because of what they used to say, cliques, my friends used to not feel welcome, and then they used to say, "I'm not going back there. I'm not going." So that's when the peer pressure came in, and my friends didn't want to go, but I was at that point forced to go because, like I said, my mother was an evangelist. Now I don't want to be there because my friends don't want to be there. My friends don't feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable. And it just was a domino effect from there. So balance and structure is definitely a must when it comes to uh, fighting this mental health battle.
I have a question, and I know that many of us who are involved in the panel discussion tonight are some type of uh, advisor, therapist, community leader. We encounter all kinds of people in our daily interactions in our work. And I know that a lot of the times, I mean, I know even me, like, working with Nan, I'm just like, sometimes I don't feel like I'm even equipped enough to interact with some of, the different types of people that come through the doors that really need more than what I may feel capable of giving at the moment. And so I just wanted to just talk briefly about, because I know that there may even be some people that are watching tonight, listening in, who may even be a part of this panel discussion, who may need some help, may need someone to talk to, may not even know how to identify if they're interacting with someone who may need help beyond their capabilities, as a counselor, as an advisor, as a therapist, and so on. So, can someone, Dr. Henry, Dr. Gardner, any of the spiritual leaders on this panel, Dr. Perkinson, I know you work a lot with the crisis intake at NAN. How can we identify, some issues that are relate to mental health and how can we identify it before we can actually take the necessary steps and ask for help? What are some things that we should be looking out for?
Well, it's very touchy because a lot of individuals that come through the crisis department that clearly need some sort of mental assistance, they don't want to go for it. They reject it. And I'm not shy to ask. I will ask a client, "Are you taking anything for mental challenges or issues?" And they'll be honest. They'll say, "Yes, I'm taking this, Dad. I'm taking this." But then a lot of them say, "Well, the doctor wanted me to take this, but there's nothing wrong with me." We had a guy here today. There's nothing wrong with me. You guys watching me. There's a camera in my house, and Meek Mill want to steal my music. And I'm like, okay. So you still got to talk to them and try to get them to see that, this is not how things work. And if you need help, you got to, do what the doctors are prescribing. And a lot of times they don't want to do that. And I'm not a big medicine guy to dump medicine and medication. That's a whole different conversation. But some people do need the assistance medically, and I don't knock people that needs medication to help cope. But people have to realize they have an issue for them to want to help them, help themselves, and for you to help them.
Thank you for sharing that, brother. And I want to build upon what was just mentioned in terms of um, what type of characteristics or markers unique markers are we seeing in our line of work before we can even um, address any solutions for those individuals. Two things that I have encountered, two characteristics or types of people that I've encountered, I would say in the past year and some change, has been individuals. So I lean in more when I talk to people, and when I can discern that there's like an intense self-reliance, right? Like this major reliance on self to achieve X, right? And oftentimes when I'm around people who really are so bent on depending solely on themselves, I know that there's going to be an eventual crash and burn, right? And so I have found the Lord has actually given me a unique calling, because I'm around a lot of high achievers in the circles that I'm in. And I believe that the Spirit has given me, again, this unique position as I'm in corporate spaces, as I'm in academic spaces. I've been able to, just have conversations and be present with people about what additional tools and strategies are they employing to give themselves a break, right? To give their brain, their heart, their soul a break, right? So that's one characteristic that I can see, and I think there can literally be some associations. Again, if I were um, mental health specialist license in that respect, I would be able to know perhaps what type of related diagnoses would fit with that. But that's been one observation. The second one has been an actual extreme. I had, unfortunately, two close friends, one this year and one late last year, who took their own lives. Right, so they died by suicide, and one of these individuals, was a mental health specialist. Was really, into yoga and all of these things that would would cloak that there are issues. And so I think what I've been leaning in also more towards is, like, I don't know, like, uh, and this is so hard to say, right? Like, because people are like, what could I have done differently? That there was really nothing, because those individuals already had their mind made up that they were going to do what they did, right? And so there's been this space that I've been in lately as a faith leader, as a emerging mental health practitioner, that I have grave limitations, right? And I also have to be okay with not being able to name everything that I'm encountering, right? And I just have to accept that, right? Because nothing in my mind thought that my friends would do what they did. So on one hand, I've been able to again identify some indicators, and then on the other hand, I've been left literally speechless with all my PhD knowledge, with all my this and all of my that. And I think it's keeping me, in summary, very human, and it's allowing me to actually journey with people and journey with myself, compared to being so obsessed with wanting to know what people are actually, going through 24/7. Because I only have finite knowledge to comprehend such a phenomenon.
So to piggyback off of what Dr. Garner said, I think you made a lot of really great points that I just want to echo. For one, as a mental health professional, I have to know my limits and my boundaries, not only what I can personally and emotionally manage, but what my expertise in clinical work is supposed to be about. So I have a private practice. That means that if there's someone who's mentally ill or someone who needs a higher level of care, my job is to help them connect those dots. I can't try to be their therapist in the meantime, knowing that they need more than what I'm able to offer in my practice. I also need to know what my personal limits are so that I can constantly take care of myself, to be there for my family, for my friends, but also for my clients and my students and people that I supervise. I always tell clients who want to help friends or want to know, how do I know when to go to therapy? A good thing to do is to establish what your baseline is. What is your normal? What is your preferred and healthiest way of functioning? When you find yourself starting to deviate from that normal, that's a good indication that something is going on that you may need help with. So to Dr. Garner's point, that may mean that you need help with work. Maybe you're overworked, maybe you're too busy, maybe you're doing too much. For other people, that might mean that you need to start going to therapy, you need to change your medication, you need to start medication. It's important to have the people around you who care and who want to be a part of your health and your wellness, that these people can keep track of what's wrong for you. These people are probably better than you are at noticing when your habits shift. So even something as simple and basic as, are you eating? Are you sleeping? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you bathing? People don't realize that these basic ways of functioning start to falter when there's something mentally and emotionally happening that we maybe can't name or can't speak to. So if you notice people around you or someone around you starting to change up the way they normally are, you can ask them, what's going on? How are you feeling? Is there anything I can do to help you? Can I go to therapy with you to support you in that space? There's never a reason why you can't go to therapy with a loved one just to support them. You can't create the therapy process for them. The therapist has to talk to them before they can come in, but you can be there on the phone with them. You can make those connections with them. You can go with them or be in the Zoom room or whatever it is, to offer your support and to show how much you care about this person. The other thing that you can do is you can talk to people that may be able to give you the answers that you need. So if you have a friend who's talking about suicide, yes, it's scary. Yes, you don't want to think about that happening. Yes, you don't want to imagine this person hurting themselves. But if that's where they are, the most you can do is talk with them about what's happening for them. So do they have a plan? Some people might say, I want to kill myself, but never really have a way of doing it. That's one way to sort of differentiate how serious they are about hurting themselves. If they have a plan that they can't actually put in place, again, there's something more mental and emotional happening that they want help with more than hurting themselves. But if they're saying to you, I'm going to jump off the Brooklyn Bridge, that's something they can very well do tomorrow. So that person, you would want to get them hospitalized. You would want to get them help immediately. And you can call 911 or the hospital and have someone admitted against their will if they're demonstrating self-harm. If a person has medication that they've been prescribed by a doctor and they're not taking it, that is self-harm. If this medication is supposed to help them regulate their mental and emotional state and be at their healthiest and they're not taking it, that is a form of self-harm that you can report somebody about. So there are different things you can do, even if you have your own therapist, that you can talk to about how to help other people around you, how to help yourself. And if you're always being that person that's helping everybody else and not getting your own help, then that's a problem too, right? So even as a therapist, I go to therapy because I need a place of my own where it's about me and not about other people. But I think if you're looking for some other answers, New York City has a free mental health service called New York City Well that offers free confidential services. I don't know how accessible they are. I don't know how backed up it might be, but that is an option. Taraji P. Henson, her Boris Henson Foundation, they also give out vouchers for mental health services. And you can get that regardless of what your income is or what your status is. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you. I know that we have a couple of young people from our NAN Youth Huddle and College Division that's on, Felivi and Giselle. I wanted to turn it over to you briefly to ask some questions to the panel. I know that the hour is late. We only, said that we would be on for an hour, but I know that there's a lot that we can continue to talk about. But I do want to be conscious of the time right now. So I want to allow our young people to ask a couple of questions to our panel tonight. Felivi, Giselle.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. For before I, ask my question, I just want to say how much I appreciate this. While I was at Morehouse, I did have a really rough time, and I remember even expressing it on our last huddle on Monday. So this means a lot. Now, my question that I have is, what are some day-to-day things someone can do to help with their mental health?
I'll jump in with that. I think that this can apply for any age group, but more specifically for our youth. Being able to express your feelings freely and finding that person that you can trust, someone that you can open up regarding your problems, and what you're facing. Taking more care of yourself physically, because mental health and your physical health do go hand in hand. So I definitely believe that managing those symptoms of your mental health, or rather, managing those symptoms of your physical health can help boost the mental health. So that can look like maybe an extra 2 hours of sleep. Maybe going to take a yoga class, praying, meditating, writing in your journal, those kind of things. Finding or just basically finding a way, a coping mechanism that's beneficial for you, because for each person it may be different. And just being okay with asking for help whenever you need it. I think a lot of us don't do that, just for we feel ashamed sometimes to say, hey, you know what, we feel depressed, or I'm feeling anxious, or I'm having some intrusive thoughts. So it's okay to find that trusted person, but also and also keeping in mind that finding that trusted person, when I say finding that trusting person, that doesn't necessarily mean it's always a friend, because that friend may also have some issues as well too. So kind of keeping in mind what your limits are, and knowing when to go to therapy, like some of the other panelists have said today.
I
Anyone
think,
else?
yeah, I'll jump in. I think it's a dope question for Levy. I think, like Debbie said, it's probably not cookie cutter. It's gonna obviously vary with different people. I know for myself, when my father died suddenly during COVID, I mean, it was hard for me to even process. Right, you're talking about a man that would travel on his own, although he was up in age. So for me, I just found my outlet, for lack of a better term, with like exercise. I started doing 2 miles a day right after he passed away, as an escape from responsibility, just thinking about other people, and those of us that are in this work, whether it be ministry or social justice, you give so much of yourself that when you come home, you're like depleted. And we think hard work and exhaustion is supposed to go hand in hand. That's not normal. It's not healthy. But we do this work because this is our work. But you still have to find a way to really come down off of that. So I started, like I said, walking 2 to 3 miles a day until I was able to run 5 miles a day. And I think that's what kind of helped me cope at the same time as grieve, because there was many days I would run even in the rain, tears in my eyes, but it was the most rewarding feeling after I completed it, to actually get in touch with my inner self. And I think part of what we have to do as people, Black people in particular, we got to find out the things that we like to do that we do not get to do often enough. Like, I love to swim, right? We don't have swimming pools, obviously, in our neighborhoods that we can access all the time. But if you know you like swimming, choose that whatever Saturday, Sunday, whatever day, and make it about yourself. And so most people say self-care. I think it's a trendy cliche sort of slogan, but it's true. You got to really just choose whatever you like, whether it be whatever, and just devote that to yourself. Put it on your calendar like you do everything else, especially for preachers, right? We just go, funerals, services, preaching, and we just don't really take care of ourselves properly. So I think whatever you identify with is that you love the most or you find peace, chase it as often as possible.
Okay. Uh, Giselle, did you want to ask a question? Giselle?
She left.
Okay. Well, I don't know if she's gonna come back in, but I do want to offer the floor as we are unfortunately having to wind down with our conversation tonight. Anything that our esteemed panelists tonight want to leave with our audience? We know that we are closing out. Well, today is the last day of Mental Health Awareness Month, but we know that, of course, this is something that is true and very, very prevalent in our nation today to continue to be aware of, to continue to provide resources, seek support, and do what is necessary as community leaders to come together to continue to provide that support for those who are in need. So, if there's anyone who wants to leave some lasting words with our audience tonight as we are going to close the forum, I see Giselle is back. So, Giselle, if you want to jump in with your question at any time, because we do have to start winding down and wrap up tonight's forum.
Good evening, guys. Sorry, I've been having some technical difficulties, but
I think we lost her again.
Yeah.
Minister Jasmine, I know you were gonna. I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, we can just jump in and go ahead. I know that we
I was just going to say before we close all of this out, I just want to encourage everybody. I don't care what God you serve. I don't care if you are Buddhist, Islamic. I don't care if you're Jewish. I don't care if you're Catholic. I don't care if you're Baptist, Pentecostal, Kojic, whatever you are. Be sure to pray. Be sure to meditate. Be sure to honor the higher presence because it wants to hear from you. I call him God, right? And so he's God to me. I talk to God. And a lot of the times, because especially during the pandemic, I was functioning in depression. And a lot of times we have that in ministry where we have preachers who are preaching through their depression, and pastors who are teaching and leading through their depression, and great people who have earned doctorates, who have earned PhDs, who have, wonderful companies and businesses, and they're functioning with a heavy weight because they are carrying things and not telling God about it. And so, something that I think is really necessary. The Hebrew word for heart is called Shema. And so back in that time, they observed the heart as synonymous with the brain. So everything you felt and everything you discerned and everything you experienced came through the filter of the heart. And so a lot of times I believe that we are struggling because we look at our hearts and we say to ourselves, there's no way a God can receive our heart as is. And I'm a living witness that that's not true. God wants to have your heart just the way it is, no matter how heavy, no matter how light. But be sure to pray. That was the biggest thing I wanted to make sure that we left off with, because if we continue to pray, and if the church would start to pray in the Black community, we would be able to discern how to help those individuals who come in and out, and how to continue to build upon our tools to get them to where they need to be. So continue to pray.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I wanna expound. Well, not even expound, but just to lift up. Um, I have been in this space for quite some time where I've been ministering to myself and others around me to uh, when I think about anxiety, right? Because I think that's a common, you know, emotion that so many of us since the pandemic, even beforehand, have been experiencing. And when we think about what anxiety is at its base level, it's this preoccupation with uh, elements, with situations and circumstances that have not yet taken place. And so, if I could encourage anyone that's listening to this broadcast, I am imploring you, I am admonishing you, empowering you, begging you even, to give your brain a break, right? And not be so obsessed with the tomorrow that has not yet happened, because it may not even happen in the way that you're thinking and believing it will go down, or that your mom said it will happen, with your professors or your coworkers, etc. And so I really, and the reason why I want you to give your brain a break, and I'm still telling myself that, is because we do not have enough knowledge to navigate tomorrow. Let tomorrow belong to your higher power. As Minister Jefferson just said about prayer, in prayer, I believe you can cast your tomorrows, your cares, right? And every other load that is keeping you bound and heavy, cast those cares over into your higher power, and you will find such peace navigating just today, right? And giving yourself grace to again navigate today, and then tomorrow will be yet again another day. So please let tomorrow belong to God.
I wanna add something. One thing that in these last 2 years of going through, be on this platform and going through with the tragedy with my family, one thing I want to let people know is what people let me know is that I'm not alone. I'm not alone in this, and my my mother always. I grew up. I wouldn't say sickly, but I grew up with certain conditions and things like that, and I really didn't want to be around people. I was actually an introvert, and one thing my mother always told me, she was like, "Listen, you have to be an individual. You have to be who God made you to be, and always remember that everybody has something wrong with them. So don't think that you're by yourself. You just got to understand. Don't go around nitpicking on what's wrong with them and not what's wrong with you, but just understand that everybody has an issue. So you need to understand you have to be who you are, and that's one of the things that's carried me throughout my life, knowing who I am and being the individual that God made me to be. And I want to encourage anyone that's listening, just do that. On top of what they said, the prayer, of course, because even though I grew up in church and had issues, one thing that did not fail me was prayer. So I definitely want to let people know that. Thank you.
I'll just give my little 2 cent spill. First of all, I agree with everybody said. I think we have to really foster a sense of community. I think we must connect more. There's no way that I know Dominique as long as I know her, or I know Alicia Butler as my colleague, or I know Derek Perkison, and I don't know their behaviors, their regular, their norms. And when people isolate themselves, even in a crowded room, it speaks loudly. And I think we have the obligation as a community to not be intrusive, but find ways to speak to somebody's pain. Like literally, you can just text somebody and say, "Hey, thought about you." You don't understand the magnitude of that, right? We all go through so much, whether it be parenting in a pandemic, whether it be employment issues or health issues or loss, death, misplaced anger. It could be anything, but just to know that, like Terrence said, you're not alone. You don't always have to say that, right? You could simply text, "Hey, thinking about you. I hope your day is going well." That little entry right there will do 2 things. It will tell the person that somebody checked for them when it's not their birthday. It's not something that's um, extraordinary. It's just a regular check-in. And then the second piece is based on their response, it will give you the indication whether that person in your community as well. And I think we just got to get back to that. And if each one really takes care of each one, I think we all cannot solve all of the things we're going through, but like Brother Floyd said, we can do it together and we're not alone.
I also want to point out that therapy is out there. I know it's hard to find. It's hard to find the right therapist, but if you call therapists in private practice, ask them if they have any pro bono slots available. Ask them if they have low cost sessions available. They may not have the room on their schedule, but they may have a student intern or someone they know that could help you out. Also, your insurance company, if you have out of network benefits, you can be reimbursed for each therapy session at a set rate. So call them, ask them about the super bill, ask them what the rate of reimbursement is. There are a few different ways to get access to mental health services. You just have to be a little bit creative about it because our society is not set up for mental health being a priority. So if you call therapists and ask them about their availability, if they know of anybody that has availability, you can probably get in to see somebody for free or at a very low rate.
In regards to the church setting, I want to say to encourage your congregations to treat people with mental illnesses the same way you would treat other, or rather, you would treat people with other illnesses. Um, Educate your congregation, bringing in speakers, having support groups, as Brother Marshall has said, checking in on your brother or sister, sending him a simple text. In addition to praying, while prayer changes things, we also want to be practical, and apply our biblical teachings to practical teaching and checking in on our brother, showing brotherly and sisterly love to one another. Talking about mental health, mental illnesses or mental health in general in your sermons. Just like we're bringing attention to mental health awareness month in the month of May, we can also do these things in our churches as well too. Avoiding stigmatizing language, and encouraging everyone in your congregation to do the same. Don't refer to people as being crazy, psycho or lunatic, or just plain old mental. Um, you know, yeah. So, and pray, 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 never cease from praying.
And I just want to add really quick, I'm sorry, I was having really bad connection issues. But to just go back to kind of what you can do on a day to day basis to help facilitate healthy mental health practices is really just making a note of the things that make you the happiest when you're not at your lowest point, and not listening to your mind when you're at your lowest point, not listening to the things that your mind tells you when you're at your lowest point. So making a conscious effort to really remember the things that bring you the most peace, the most joy, when you're feeling balanced and when you're feeling pretty settled, and making a note of that and revisiting that list and revisiting those things whenever you're feeling down and about. So something for me has been blogging and writing. So making sure that I'm really facilitating a healthy way to kind of process my emotions and do it that way. But I know that that looks different for everyone. So just making sure that people are aware of their outlets that they utilize when they're not feeling their lowest, and then revisiting them when they are.
Yes, and I want to add, last but not, Alicia, you want silent. I want to add, also, we all have some form of mental health issue. All of us, like, some of us handle it better than others, but we all have some sort of trauma, some sort of issue that we're dealing with, that we've dealt with, that we're gonna deal with, and we just got to stay the course. And hopefully, we have a good support system, and family members that's understandable, knowledgeable, like Debbie Clark said. We can't call people names and call them out. We have to have empathy and sympathy for a lot of these individuals. And I have a saying that, not only do I have to think for myself, a lot of the times I have to think for other people because they don't make right decisions for themselves or get me in some trouble. So a lot of times you think not only for yourself but for others as well. So we all have some type of mental health issue. Again, all of us on here do. It depends on how we handle it. And if you look like you're doing well and you're normal, so to speak, and then you're handling it well, you're handling all the trauma well. So salute to you and everyone that's handling it well. And I just gotta say hi, Juju. Hi, my baby Juju. That's the House of Justice baby right there. That's the movement.
Hi,
Baby.
Justice.
Look at her.
Y'all excuse me. I'm gonna blow kisses to the baby because we can be serious, but it's a baby, y'all. Come on now.
No, but has anyone not spoken? We do want to close out tonight's forum, and thank you all for joining us tonight. We know that this was pretty much last minute, but we know and believe in the work that we do, and so certainly tonight resonated that the commitment, the support, that each of us have to our work and to our community. So that goes without said. I want to thank all of our panelists for coming on. Thank you for your insight. Thank you for your expertise in lending in tonight's discussion. We know that this is continual. We know that, talking about mental health and addressing our issues as it relates to how we can really expand and strengthen our community is very important. So we look forward to continuing these discussions, continuing to provide resources and share information as we know is valuable to all of us. If there's anyone on our panel that has not given their last words for tonight, I want to extend that for you to please be brief and helping us to close out tonight's forum. And then I'm going to say some more thank yous and we'll be done. Is there anyone else that didn't speak? Okay, so we certainly know that there are a lot of follow-up questions and questions that are being written in the chat. Those of you who are watching us via Facebook Live, we know that there are questions that are being asked. We invite you to follow our panelists on social media, follow National Action Network, tap in. If you're not a member of NAN, join. We have a robust organization that we are continuing to do the work as it is necessary. So if you had a question that you really needed answered or you really want to tap into further engage with any of us, we invite you to do that. And we will share that information on our website of how you can stay in touch with everyone. But we certainly do thank all of our panelists. We thank you, Mr. Derek Perkinson and your crisis team at National Action Network for always responding to the calls. We have a very robust system. We take hundreds and hundreds of calls every day of people who call in and need help. So thank you, JT Trollinger and Supreme Creative Agency for helping us with our technology needs tonight and for directing us creatively. We want to thank Ashley Sharpton for curating tonight's discussion. Thank you for your leadership. And as always, you can tune into NAN's Youth Huddle. That is one forum, one outlet of support, an outlet of engagement that we provide for our young people every Monday evening starting at 6:00 p.m. And you can just log on to the website, www.nationalactionnetwork.net, to engage with our young people every Monday starting at 6:00 p.m. Or you can engage on Facebook at nationalactionnetwork.net. I want to thank Mr. Terrence Floyd, who came on and shared some of his personal story. We definitely continue to support you and your family in your fight for justice and continue to work together to really strengthen our communities. And thank you all for joining us wherever you tuned in from. We appreciate your efforts. We appreciate you joining us. And we ask you to stay tuned as we have more discussions, not only on mental health, but as we know, we're moving into Gun Violence Awareness Month in the month of June. There's a lot to engage with in our community, so we look forward to engaging with you on different aspects as we are broadening and strengthening the organization. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Sister Patrice Perry, for opening up our forum tonight. And thank you all for joining us. We wish you a good evening and hope that you stay safe, stay well, be blessed, and find, of course, the joy of your life that starts right from within. So, good night, everyone. Thank you.